By the time I'm having a conversation with Kristen, it's in part because there's already some negative responses coming from within, the LDS community. Some of them, and even as I say that, I feel like I have to say there were some really, really good responses also. So it wasn't like, oh my gosh, this was our community just totally failed me, and it was so awful, and nobody in our church knows how to connect to gay people. No, that is not true. That is not at least my experience. There was some really, really beautiful responses, but then there were also some really, really painful ones, and so already by the time I was connecting with Kristen, and part of why I was connecting with Kristen was because of those negative responses. And, that included, people, some people like relational distancing, like, not wanting to talk to me or respond to me. People who I tried to connect with, maybe on Facebook, to tell them before they maybe heard, now that I'd said this thing over the pulpit and like come out, maybe before they heard from somebody else, I would go back and tell them. People not responding necessarily. I had some people unfriend me from Facebook. I had some people who wanted to use my story in a more political way that really felt very violating and very unsafe to me. So already there were things about coming out that were just so scary, on top of, here I am, I've had this characteristic, known this thing about myself since I was very young. So finally I'm saying this thing about myself, and I've built up all this fear, and have incurred, a lot of kind of negative experiences along the way. And so the vulnerability of coming out in this community, and then having some of those negative responses layered on top of it, and then thinking about stepping out even further and telling my story, like, it was just so overwhelming to me. I was so afraid. I was afraid of the LDS community and their response and giving more details about my story, and I was afraid of even the gay community, like, because I'm like of the choices that I made, and so like finding a sense of like, where was my sense of safety, a community that I could like, really just kind of sink into. I didn't feel like I had one. So again, it was just like, how do I navigate this? It was totally overwhelming to me.
And that part of the experience seems quite congruent with what we hear other gay Mormons saying. If they've come out, or even if they haven't, they feel kind of like, I don't belong here, I don't belong there. If I'm attempting and trying to maintain my faith and keep my covenants, the gay community's not super supportive. Maybe my family's not really supportive, and yet we have the power within our community to create this like really neat, safe space. I mean, we have all these wonderful tools within our faith to, for instance, in our history and our faith, we understand what it feels like to be persecuted, to be marginalized. Just by being LDS, we get that. Of course, we also currently feel that in many situations, personally and collectively as a church. So we have a lot of the foundation to get the empathy, and yet oftentimes we don't take that response in a way that lends itself to that safe feeling for our gay members that are feeling this, because that's still a scary place and an unknown place for us. But we do it well in many instances. So I believe we can do that for our gay Mormons as well. And I think that's what you just illustrated by telling us you did not feel like you had a gay place, and you should.
Right. So kind of in that context, we started talking like on just a fairly regular basis, like it wasn't like, okay, now you are this person that I'm going to constantly go to, and talk about this, but, just on a regular basis, like, how are things going, and what's going on with that, and tell me more about how you're navigating that, and what's going on with this, and just really like regularly checking in with me, taking an interest in the journey that I was taking and the vulnerability of it. And so that's really kind of how we started kind of connecting around this on a regular basis. And so by the time I came out in my home ward, it was actually 6 months later, right after the launch of MormonsandGays.org. And so that happened in December, and then I came out in Fast and Testimony meeting in my home ward in January.
And was there something about MormonsandGays.org correlated with that?
It was interesting because at the time I was so busy and bogged down in grad school and really awful paper and trying to finish out that those words in Mormons and Gays, it didn't capture me. It didn't I was like, okay, this is good, but I was so distracted by other aspects of life that I couldn't even fully connect with what the website was saying initially. And then it was only I think once the holidays hit and I actually got a break and I went back and reviewed it, that I remember just feeling like this has the potential to shift things in a really amazing way. Just the ideas in MormonsandGays.org has the potential to change things in a hugely significant way. And it made me feel way more validated and safe. And again, I'm already taking this journey of coming out, and so kind of halfway through my journey, I'm getting this kind of validating experience of yeah, we do want you here, and it is important to listen to gay people, and we do want to be this compassionate, loving, sensitive, thoughtful community that's at the forefront of outreach. And I'm just like, wow, this feels revolutionary to me. These are not words that I'm hearing kind of in my day-to-day life around this issue. So I think because of that, I felt supported in the journey that I had felt I needed to take.